Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Monkman Drew, and I'm here to do my manga discussion for My Hero Academia manga chapter 366. And in this video, I just really want to go over Shigaraki's new transformation, what it means for the story moving forward, and whether or not this is going to be a permanent transformation that he is going to have. But before we get into that, I'd like to go over a few differences between the official and unofficial translations before I dive more into this discussion. For starters, when it comes to the differences between the official and unofficial translations for this chapter, one major difference pretty much comes from Mirio's inclusion in this chapter, more specifically the inclusion of his joke. Because when it comes to Mirio's joke, it is a slight difference in translations. In the unofficial translation, it's translated as him showing his peach, while in the official translation, it's the rising moon or the rising full moon is here tonight. It is a slight difference and really doesn't take anything away from what is in this chapter, but this could just be a difference in how this joke is executed, and many people have mixed feelings about it. And as I said in my review, I am pretty much okay with how the joke was told and why this is here, because not only does it tie into Mirio's character and that this is something that Mirio would have done, but this ties into what he was able to do in this moment on his own by distracting Shigaraki using comedy as a way of doing so, and it ties into something that is with his character, with Night Eye, and did buy them enough time for Deku to arrive and kick him. So yeah, that's a slight difference there, but the major difference that I want to talk about, and the major difference that ties into why I'm making this video, comes from the explanation at the beginning of this chapter in a line of dialogue said by Best Jeanist. And here, the difference comes primarily from the understanding of Shigaraki's new form. And the major difference when it comes to Shigaraki's new transformation in this chapter really involves the idea and understanding of what this transformation is. Because relatively speaking, the initial translation of what Shigaraki's body is doing is really consistent between the official and unofficial translations. Basically, that his body is looking for a form that is best suited for the situation, how the mass of fingers were pretty much a way for Shigaraki and his body to act upon his will at that moment, which is doing and causing the most amount of destruction while also protecting the main body away from the heroes, and how because of the accumulation of damage on his body over time throughout this fight, as well as the mental attacks provided by the heroes upon Shigaraki, that this has caused Shigaraki's body to transform into a new form. And the difference comes from whether or not this new form is the final form or just another form inside of Shigaraki. Because in the official translation, it is stated to be a new ideal form for this particular moment, while in the unofficial translation, it is translated as that he's evolved into his apex form. And the thing about apex could seem to imply from the unofficial translation that this is sort of a final form, which ties into another difference in this chapter when it comes to how Best Jeanist implies in the unofficial translation that this is his final form, while in the official translation, it is implied more that this is just another form that Shigaraki has created. So with that idea in mind, what does this mean for Shigaraki and his new transformation? Well, if we go by the official translation, you can imply that we're probably going to see Shigaraki's body transform at least another time after this. Because the reasoning why his body transformed in this way is to be more defensive, to prevent the heroes from doing any more damage to his body while he no longer has his quirks. And that's probably where the key difference comes from, is that when it comes to his transformation, it is directly tied to the fact that his body hasn't fully transformed. And this ties into pretty much why Shigaraki takes this form at all, is because he no longer has quirks. And how, in relation to the quirk singularity theory, we know for a fact that when it comes to his fingers, that is something that is a byproduct and a understanding of the result of the quirk singularity doomsday theory, and that this isn't necessarily something that we saw immediately at the start of the war when he sent out these fingers, but something that we saw right before the war started, when we saw him in the cave and we saw that mass of fingers coming out of his left hand. So the idea of this being something that Horikoshi just pulled out of nowhere, so many people who believe that this is something that just came out of nowhere is not the case, and how the explanation was always there that it's in relation to the quirk's doomsday theory. But what we didn't know is why it was that mass of fingers and not something else. So basically, the idea of it is that these massive fingers is just the stepping stone for Shigaraki realizing what his true body can be because of the quirk singularity theory. And that at first it started off with this massive hands, which is very helpful for protecting his body, which most likely is derived from the fact that even when he had the regen quirk, his body took heavy damage as well as damage to the quirk factor due to the Star and Stripe fight. And later on, we see that his body takes even more damage against the fight with the heroes. So his body began to adapt in a way and transform into this new form so that he can become more defensive. Because even though he was able to emit all of these fingers from his hand, his main body was still relatively intact with the exception of a few scars, but his hands were pretty much easily able to be defeated and dispatched of relatively quickly by Bakugo and the other heroes. So now he needs to find a more ideal body that allows for him to still withstand these attacks without having to fear having heavy damage done upon him. So most likely than not, when it comes to his new transformation with these hands are probably just as, if not more durable than his main body. And meaning that within the story moving forward, as far as we know, he won't be emitting these multiple fingers out of his hands, and that the hands that are made up of the faces of his family will be something that is more hard or more comparable to his main body. So the idea that we need to think of is that, is this his final form, or is something else going to happen that is going to force him to transform once again? I think this is most likely going to be the case, but it's not what you think. The form that he is in right now is specifically because he's in a quirkless state. So his body is transforming in a way to compensate for that fact. But if his quirks are ever given back to him and he has regeneration, this could mean that he could revert back to the gigantic mass of fingers, or that he actually transforms into a new or different form because it now has to deal with the fact that he has a whole bunch of quirks. So what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to Shigaraki, once he has his quirks back, his body may go through another transformation that will be more suited for the situation, which would be that he now has a body that can have and use the quirks. So this could mean that his body reverts back to having the big massive fingers, where he's able to use decay and propagate decay through all of those fingers, which would be best for the situation because he now has his quirks back, which includes decay and all for one. Or he goes through another or different transformation where his body may lose the fingers and the hands covering his body, and he may just go back to his normal form that may be a little bit more buffer, a little bit more durable. His hands may be fully recovered at this point, or he could retain like the human-like vestiges on his fingers, but he may not necessarily be covered with the hands on his body or his face. Or maybe he does, but they become a little bit more prominent than what they are in this chapter. There are many different ways that this could actually go beyond what we've seen, but this all involves the idea of what Horikoshi wants to draw with this new transformation and what this new transformation is to represent. Because the first transformation that we see with the mass of fingers represents Shigaraki's want and will to destroy everything as much as possible and as fast as possible while protecting himself from the heroes attacking him. This current transformation is more adept at more raw power, having a giant hand made with fingers that are giant, as well as the hands covering up his body, making his body more defensive. With the new transformation, it could focus on him just being pure and utter destructiveness, which could just be his normal body, but just raging to the extreme. It could physically buff up his body to be stronger, faster, more durable, while combining the other aspects that we've seen, having the giant fist being made of the multiple fingers while having his body even covered with more hands and more fingers. We just don't know, but we know for a fact that it's going to be very symbolic because this most recent transformation is symbolic in itself, having hands cover Shigaraki's body very much like the hands that he had of his family members covering his body at the beginning of the story. So whatever this new transformation is going to be, like I said, it has to be symbolic in a way, and it could be in relation to what we've seen before or something completely brand new. So yeah, that's all I really want to say and discuss for this chapter. I think it's very interesting, and once again, I think that the design is personally my favorite design that we've seen of Shigaraki recently. But let me ask you, what do you think of Shigaraki's new design? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you prefer an older design, or do you want something new? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you like this type of content, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!